Rain pattered against the wide glass windows of Brookshire Home and Living, a high-end home goods store in the heart of Atlanta's wealthiest shopping district. Outside, the sidewalk gleamed under the dim gray sky, reflecting the neat rows of manicured potted plants and gold-lettered storefront signs. Inside, the store was a sanctuary of polished white tile floors, soft instrumental music, and the faint, comforting scent of lavender cleaning spray mixed with vanilla candles. The shelves were curated to perfection, stacks of plush white towels folded with military precision, rows of crystal wine glasses lined up like soldiers, and expensive cookware sets displayed on gleaming marble counters. A subtle air of exclusivity lingered in every corner. Through the sliding glass doors, Angela Brooks stepped inside, shaking a few drops of rain from her worn cardigan sleeve. She was in her early 50s, with smooth, deep brown skin and short, natural hair. Her jeans were faded, her sneakers scuffed, and the canvas tote slung over her shoulder bore the faint logo of a community food drive from years ago. She walked slowly, her eyes scanning the displays with a thoughtful, almost analytical gaze. She paused at a shelf of copper cookware, running her fingertips lightly over the polished surface, then moved to a stack of linen tablecloths, quietly checking the stitching at the corners. Near the back of the store, she lingered by a rack of imported dishware. The delicate porcelain gleamed under the soft overhead lighting, each piece tagged with a price that might make some customers hesitate. But Angela's expression didn't flicker. She examined each item with the calm precision of someone who knew exactly what they were looking at. From the counter, Chloe Harper, a young white cashier with straight blonde hair pulled into a sleek ponytail, noticed her. Chloe's uniform, a crisp navy blouse with the Brookshire logo embroidered at the collar, looked fresh from the dry cleaner. She leaned against the register, idly tapping her manicured nails against the glass display case, her eyes following Angela as she moved from aisle to aisle. Angela paid no attention to the glances, absorbed instead in the textures and craftsmanship of the items she picked up. She wasn't in a rush. Each step seemed deliberate, unhurried, as if she had all the time in the world to decide exactly what to take to the counter. The rain outside continued its steady rhythm, muffled by the glass. Inside, the store felt like a quiet stage, the air charged with the subtle tension of two women on opposite sides of an unspoken assumption neither had voiced. Yet, from her position behind the sleek glass counter, Chloe Harper kept Angela Brooks in her peripheral vision. The soft chime of the store's entrance had barely faded when Chloe began forming her silent assessment. Angela moved with the unhurried pace of someone who wasn't afraid to take her time. But to Chloe, it didn't read as confidence. It read as someone killing time. Her faded jeans, the well-worn cardigan, the canvas tote with its faded logo, they stood out like a wrinkle in the otherwise manicured atmosphere of Brookshire Home and Living. Chloe leaned subtly toward her coworker, Tina, a part-time sales associate organizing a display of scented diffusers just a few feet away. Lowering her voice, Chloe murmured, "We've got a browser." Tina didn't look up from arranging the bottles. "A browser?" "You know," Chloe said, tilting her chin slightly toward Angela, without making it obvious. "Just looking. Probably not buying. Definitely not here for the cookware section." Tina flicked her eyes in Angela's direction, then back to her task. Maybe she's just taking her time. Chloe smirked faintly. "Sure, but I've worked here long enough to know people like that come in, touch everything, ask a bunch of questions, and leave with nothing. If they don't knock something over first." Her tone wasn't loud, but it carried enough to be overheard if someone was standing in the wrong spot. A middle-aged man at the far end of the counter glanced up briefly at the sound of Chloe's voice, then returned to inspecting a set of wine decanters. Meanwhile, Angela remained absorbed in her browsing, carefully lifting a porcelain plate to check its weight, then setting it back exactly in place. Chloe crossed her arms, her eyes narrowing slightly. She watched Angela pick up a piece of cookware, a copper saucepan with a price tag that made even regular customers pause. Chloe's lips curved into a faint, knowing smile. "Let's see how long this lasts," she thought. The rain outside streaked the glass storefront in diagonal lines, the sound faint but steady. Inside, the quiet instrumental music seemed to underscore the subtle but growing gap between the way Chloe saw Angela and the reality Angela carried with her. a reality Chloe couldn't yet imagine. Angela Brooks approached the counter with the calm assurance of someone who had made her decision. In her arms, she carried a neatly stacked selection of items: a copper saucepan, a matching skillet, and a boxed set of high-end kitchen knives. The gleam of the cookware caught the overhead lighting, turning the polished copper into warm gold against her dark cardigan. Chloe Harper's posture straightened slightly as Angela placed the items on the counter. For a brief moment, Chloe's professional smile flickered into place, the automatic gesture she gave to all customers. But it didn't quite reach her eyes. Angela set down her tote bag, reaching inside for her wallet. "I'll take these," she said simply. Her tone was polite, steady. Chloe glanced at the total on the register's display as she began scanning the items, the soft beep of the barcode reader punctuating the quiet air. The number climbing on the screen made her pause. She looked from the total to Angela's clothes, her gaze lingering a second too long. "Are you sure you want all of these?" Chloe asked, her voice carrying a faint incredulity under the thin layer of customer service. Angela met her gaze evenly. "Yes." Chloe hesitated, her fingers resting on the register's keys. Then she leaned forward slightly, lowering her voice. "I'm just saying, this is quite a purchase. These items are, on the higher end." Angela's expression didn't change. "I'm aware of that." The silence between them stretched for a few seconds, until Chloe's tone shifted from patronizing curiosity to outright gatekeeping. "Before I ring this up, I need to make sure you can actually afford it. Store policy on large purchases requires pre-approval from certain customers." Angela's brows knit faintly. "Certain customers?" Chloe nodded, her words coming faster now, as if she was reassuring herself as much as she was explaining. "It's nothing personal. It's just that when someone we don't recognize makes a purchase of this size, we have to confirm payment before completing the sale. It saves everyone time in case there's an issue." Her eyes flicked meaningfully toward Angela's cardigan and jeans. Angela's voice remained even, but there was steel under the calm. "I have the payment right here. You can process it like you would for anyone else." "I'm sorry," Chloe said, stepping back slightly from the register, "but I can't do that without clearance." Policy A couple of nearby shoppers glanced over, sensing the tension. The man who had been inspecting the wine decanters now stood still, pretending to browse while clearly listening. Angela slowly picked up her tote bag, keeping her eyes on Chloe. "Then I think we have a bigger problem than your so-called policy." Her words were measured, almost quiet, but the precision in her tone made them land with the weight of a challenge. The soft hum of the store's background music suddenly felt like it was coming from far away. Angela Brooks stood perfectly still, her hands resting lightly on the counter, her eyes fixed on Chloe Harper with a steady, unblinking calm. "I'd like to speak to your manager," Angela said, her tone clear but not raised. Chloe tilted her head slightly, her lips pressing into a faint smile that didn't reach her eyes. "The manager's not available right now." Angela's brow lifted a fraction. "Not available? Or not willing?" Chloe gave a small shrug, adopting a falsely casual tone. "He's in the back doing inventory. He doesn't usually come out unless it's urgent. And this," she gestured vaguely toward the cookware on the counter, "really isn't urgent." A man browsing the wine decanters had stopped pretending to shop entirely, his gaze flicking between the two women. Near the display of towels, a young couple whispered quietly to each other, clearly aware of the tension. Angela remained unmoved. "You've refused to process my purchase without cause. That's urgent enough." Chloe shifted her weight from one foot to the other, her polished demeanor slipping just slightly. "Ma'am, I'm just following policy. If you have an issue, you can come back later when the manager's available." Angela slowly reached into her tote bag and pulled out her phone. Her hands moved with deliberate precision, scrolling through her contacts. "No, I don't think I'll wait." Chloe's eyes narrowed just slightly. Calling someone isn't going to change store policy. Angela didn't respond right away. She pressed the phone to her ear, her voice low but crisp as soon as the call connected. "Hi, it's Angela Brooks. I'm at the Brookshire location on Peachtree. I'm speaking to a cashier who's refusing to process my purchase. Can you join me here?" She paused, listening, her eyes never leaving Chloe's face. "Yes." Thank you. Hanging up, Angela placed her phone back into her tote with the same calm movements as before. We'll have this resolved shortly. The quiet confidence in her voice unsettled Chloe, more than if she had raised her voice or caused a scene. For the first time since Angela walked in, Chloe found herself unsure of exactly who she was dealing with. In the background, the rain outside tapped against the large glass windows, each drop punctuating the silence that had settled over the store. The soft ding of the store's automatic doors broke the tense silence. Cold, rain-scented air drifted in from outside as a tall man in an immaculate charcoal gray suit stepped inside. His polished black shoes clicked against the glossy white floor with measured confidence. Every detail about him, the gold tie clip, the discreet but expensive wristwatch, the perfect knot in his silk tie, spoke of someone who lived in boardrooms, not retail aisles. His presence alone drew subtle attention from the few customers scattered through the store. Mr. Gregory Daniels, regional director of Brookshire Home and Living, didn't pause to browse. His eyes swept across the showroom until they locked on Angela Brooks, still standing calmly at the register with her cookware neatly arranged in front of her. His stern expression immediately softened into something warmer. "Angela," he said, striding toward her, with his hand outstretched. "I'm sorry it took me a few minutes. Traffic was awful in this rain." Angela's lips curved into a faint, knowing smile as she shook his hand. "I appreciate you coming so quickly, Gregory." From behind the counter, Chloe Harper straightened abruptly, her eyes darting between them. She didn't speak, not yet, but her confusion was clear. They know each other? Mr. Daniels glanced at the cookware on the counter, then at Chloe. His smile faded. "Is there a reason Ms. Brooks hasn't been helped yet?" Chloe's voice wavered just slightly as she replied, I was just following policy. I needed to verify the purchase before." He cut her off with a small raise of his hand. "Policy?" His tone was polite but firm. "Ms. Brooks is one of the most important clients this store will ever have. You don't delay her for policy." Several nearby customers had stopped what they were doing entirely, openly watching now. The man at the wine decanters folded his arms, as if settling in to witness the full exchange. Angela remained quiet, letting the moment breathe. She didn't need to say anything. Her calm demeanor was louder than any outburst could have been. Mr. Daniels turned back to her, his voice softening again. "Would you like me to finish the transaction for you personally?" Angela nodded once. "That would be perfect." As Mr. Daniels moved behind the counter, Chloe stepped back, her cheeks tinged with pink. For the first time since Angela entered the store, Chloe's air of superiority had completely evaporated. The quiet click of the register keys filled the space as Mr. Gregory Daniels began scanning the cookware, the soft beep of each item breaking the stillness in the store. Chloe Harper stood stiffly to the side, her hands clasped together in front of her, eyes fixed on the counter as if avoiding direct contact with either of them might undo the last 10 minutes. The professional confidence she wore earlier had drained from her posture. Even her polished voice seemed to have deserted her. When the last item was scanned, Mr. Daniels looked up, not at the register, but straight at Chloe. His voice was calm, but it carried an unmistakable authority. "Chloe," he said evenly, "I think there's something you should know before we finish here." She swallowed, her fingers tightening slightly on the hem of her blouse. "Yes, sir?" "This," he gestured to Angela with a small, deliberate motion, "is Ms. Angela Brooks. As of last week, she is the new majority owner of the entire Brookshire Home and Living chain. That includes this store." The words hung in the air, like a dropped stone in a silent pond, rippling through everyone within earshot. Chloe's mouth parted slightly, but no words came. Her eyes darted to Angela and back to Mr. Daniels, searching for some sign this was a joke. Mr. Daniels' expression remained serious. "She's been visiting locations in person, quietly, to observe our customer service. And I have to say, what she experienced here today is deeply disappointing." Several customers nearby glanced at Chloe with raised eyebrows. The man who had been loitering by the wine decanters let out a barely audible whistle. A woman with a shopping basket muttered under her breath, "Oh, wow." Angela finally spoke, her tone measured but clear. "I wanted to see how we treat people when we don't know who they are. Unfortunately, I got my answer." Chloe's voice came out softer now, almost pleading. Ms. Brooks, I didn't know. Angela raised a hand gently, cutting her off without hostility, but with finality. Exactly. You didn't know, and you made assumptions anyway. The register gave a final beep as Mr. Daniels completed the sale. He placed the neatly bagged cookware in front of Angela with a respectful nod. All set, ma'am. Angela smiled faintly, taking the bag in hand. She didn't need to say more. The weight of the moment, and of the truth, had already said it all. The store felt different now. The hum of the soft background music returned, but it seemed muted, as if the air itself was holding its breath. Angela Brooks stood at the counter, her new purchases bagged neatly at her side. She glanced briefly around the store, at the curious customers, the polished displays, the rain-slicked windows, then back to Mr. Gregory Daniels. Thank you for coming so quickly, she said with quiet sincerity. My pleasure, Daniels replied. And again, I'm sorry you had to deal with this here. Angela nodded once, her gaze shifting to Chloe Harper. The cashier's posture was small now, her earlier air of authority replaced by something closer to shame. She didn't quite meet Angela's eyes, instead staring somewhere at the middle distance between them. I don't hold grudges, Angela said evenly, but I do expect better. From everyone in this company. People should leave our stores feeling respected, not judged. Chloe swallowed hard, her voice barely above a whisper. Yes, ma'am, I understand. Angela held her gaze for a beat longer, then turned to Daniels. Let's have HR schedule her for retraining. I want her to succeed, but the right way. Consider it done, Daniels said firmly. Angela picked up her bag, the polished copper inside catching the light through the thin plastic. She walked toward the sliding glass doors, her steps unhurried, her presence somehow larger now than when she'd entered. As she stepped outside, the rain greeted her again, cool droplets speckling her cardigan. She didn't rush to her car. Instead, she paused under the awning for a moment, watching the traffic pass, a faint private smile tugging at her lips. It wasn't the smile of revenge, but of resolve, the satisfaction of knowing she'd revealed the truth without raising her voice. Inside, the store slowly returned to its quiet rhythm, but the conversation lingered in low murmurs among customers, and the weight of what had just happened pressed in around Chloe as she stood at the counter, replaying every moment in her mind. For the rest of the day, each time the door's chime rang and another customer walked in, Chloe felt a small sting of self-awareness. She knew she'd remember this morning for a long time, not because she'd been embarrassed, but because she'd been shown, in the clearest possible way, the cost of a snap judgment.